taking what I learned and practiced on the mat so diligently and applying it to other things, I'm starting to realize that that's the only lesson. It's not about defense. It's not about fitness, although those are part of the story. It's about learning how to apply yourself to something that you're interested in. And until you can take your work off the mats and put it to work in the world, doesn't really have the importance.
All right, this is a really special Stories with Sensei. Sensei Fairboards was nice enough to say, why don't you do some episodes with some other senseis? And I hope you don't mind me calling you Sensei. I hope that's appropriate.
I expect it.
I'm with Tom Callos today. And just to get things going, I know that you had a wonderful day yesterday at the Martial Arts History Museum. And what did that mean to you? What did you see that kind of brought to life martial arts?
Well, when you walk in a museum and you know all the people that are pictured, first of all, you know you're getting old, you know?
Right.
But what Michael's done so well with the Martial Arts Museum is it's inclusive to all cultures, because all cultures had some form of martial arts. So there's, of course, Korean, Japanese, Chinese, but there's Hispanic, there's a boxing section, there's Japanese anime, there's all of these things that have been brought into the family of what we often look at as a very narrow thing, you know,
right.
But it's much bigger than that. And I think the museum has done a good job at expressing that. And it's about stories like this interview. It's about stories and the people involved, and it personalizes it, and it makes it exciting and makes you want to know who these people are. Mm-hmm. And you leave that museum with some sense of a depth of something that you've participated in or participate in that was maybe grander than you thought. And I love that part. And I love museums in general. But Michael's done a great job of taking this world that we've lived in, this niche, and really showing its breadth of influence and all these different and the disparity of people and where they came from and war-torn, and it's just very interesting. So yeah, it's one of my favorite haunts to go to when I come to LA.
I love that. And I think what you're getting there, hopefully like here, right, are stories. Ultimately, you're looking at history and things that make up this legacy of martial arts and what we do. But within that, right, you're feeling the stories of what evolved us, right?
Well, you know, I was a consultant for many years helping school owners establish themselves in their communities and get respect through their stories. And not a lot of them were good storytellers, although they had stories to tell. So cultivating that. What's your story? Where do you come from? Like when we met today, I asked you, where do you come from? What are you doing? You get a sense of who the person is, and you relate on some level.
Empathy, that's what I say. I really believe beyond this or anything, stories and hearing our backgrounds is where you relate or create empathy, and then helps with peace and helps with spreading and energy, I think, positive energy.
You can bring it down to a much smaller scale, and any teacher in any classroom, be they martial arts or English or whatever, it's all about the stories that are told and the stories that are brought to the classroom, and it just keeps expanding out from there, whether it's the film we watched last night that my friend Cynthia Rothrock produced, which was a big grand story, drama, you know, all that, or it's just the story of this little kid who came in who was not very confident, who through your training developed the posture and attitudes of that the martial arts is all about.
Let me ask you, as we're talking about the history and the legacies, for you, your story, what's the first moment, not like, now I'm a martial artist, but do you remember the moment when it clicked? Like, I want to be doing this. I want to make this something, even if it was watching a movie that had martial arts, or you're a big kid that beat you up, or
well, it's a whole bunch of things, you know, in the end. But the ones that I remember best are watching the Green Hornet and being, you know, and I had a little brother and sister, so they became my, you know, where I was testing what I saw on the screen, and then I remember that was my first class that I ever took was in 1969, and it was a judo class, no adults, no children, just adults. But I sat there and watched long enough that at the end of class they invited me in. Now I'm rolling and throwing guys. But I walked into a taekwondo school when I was 11, took a look around, watched the class a little bit, and I knew right then that's what I was going to do. I don't know why or how or if I'd been dropped on my head or what, but that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I went about doing. And but that clarity at a very young age, I don't have anything else that I can relate to it. There's no other desire or interest that I had that I pursued so diligently.
Have you gone back since, or I'm sure you have, but maybe recently, and like watched a Green Hornet and said, "There's the moment, the kick," or the like? Does any of it ever like kind of still linger there with ideas?
I found the first episode of Kung Fu,
Oh, right.
And I wept.
Mm-hmm.
I feel emotional now because you're at an age when you believe things you won't believe later. You accept things, and I remember seeing this character, David Carradine's character, doing things, and I just thought, well, that's power. That is my shield to weakness or whatever I was imagining. And yeah, I go back and I watch those things, and I either chuckle at how base it is, or I'm, in the case of Kung Fu, Bruce Lee had a connection to it. Right. He was a philosopher even at a young age. And you see where we were starting to be introduced to ideas that were foreign to how we grew up.
Right.
And they were digestible.
Right.
And so, yeah, I like going back to see that into your roots. There aren't a lot of, there's some things you can never go back to.
Right.
But these stories they told on TV and in print, those you can return to and remember how they inspired you.
History and stories. Looking back at all that, and here we are now, what would you say, quickly, your story would be? If someone said, tell me in a few sentences, what's your story with martial arts?
Ooh, learning and relearning.
Wow.
Starting, thinking you know it, then starting again. And anybody can relate in anything they're passionate about, but I'm now at 65 with 50 years of training, learning about what I learned, what's left over. If you get an age where you're infirm or you're not as young, we all can relate. What did you get from it?
Right.
And so I'm still an analysis of that, and I've become an artist, and so taking what I learned and practiced on the mats so diligently and applying it to other things, I'm starting to realize that that's the only lesson. It's not about defense. It's not about fitness, although those are part of the story. It's about learning how to apply yourself to something that you're interested in. And until you can take your work off the mats and put it to work in the world, doesn't really have the importance. If you're only a martial artist on the mats, if you only practice the discipline, the focus and all that, it's important and it has value, but nothing compared to the value of when you take the way you learned and the way you overcame things and the way you bonded with classmates and all the things that are part of a martial arts school, and apply it in your family, in your work, to your community, to whatever else you're passionate about. That's when you really know, okay, that's what I was supposed to learn.